Hey there, friends. Welcome back. This is episode 23 of Who the Heck Did I Marry? So, in the last episode, I was telling you about our Cottonwood house and how we had the 80/20 loan, and basically, my parents were kind enough to bail us out of the whole 80/20 loan situation by basically loaning us the money. They got the money by taking a mortgage out on their home, which was not that big of a deal for them because their home was worth more. They had stellar credit, so they were able to get us a fixed rate mortgage that allowed us to make one payment and it was no problem. So our renters were paying more than the mortgage was with this fixed rate loan, which was great, and that solved temporarily our Cottonwood issues. Okay, so we are at the stage where Ken is unemployed. And during this 6 month unemployment, that gave him a lot of time to do a lot of things that were not, I'm going to call it job related. The first thing that happened in this whole stint of 6 month unemployment is we went on a trip. So Ken came from Michigan and he had a lot of friends that were in Michigan. And we had been back at one point in time to go for a friend's wedding. So I had gotten a chance to meet some of his friends. And then some of his friends had come for our wedding. So our wedding was first. Friend's wedding in Michigan was second in the timeline. So I had gotten to meet through different situations some of his friends that he had in Michigan. One of them had moved to Milwaukee. Most of them were still living in Michigan. So a tradition that one of his friends had who lived in Michigan was that he went to the Indy 500 every single year. So Indy 500 is kind of like, if any of you have not done it, the way that I would relate it is something like a big festival weekend centered around a car race. Okay. So if you've ever been in Arizona, we have Country Thunder. I feel like it's that. Everybody goes out and camps for like 3, 4, 5 days. And then there's like concerts during the whole thing. And then also with things like Coachella or things, events like that, where everybody kind of goes out and camps for a period of time or comes in daily for events. Obviously, there's hotels and stuff. That's kind of the feel of the Indy 500. So his friends had always wanted to go as a group because this one guy went every single year. So he was experienced in it. He knew how to get the lots. He had a camper. So two of them had campers. They're going to go. And they invited anybody who wanted to go to come. And we had thought about it. And again, when we made the decision to go, Ken was employed. We had the vacation. Everything was going to be fine. But in the gap of booking the trip and then it actually happening, Ken was unemployed. So we ended up flying to Michigan, and I'm going to say at this point we're on a budget, which makes sense because right now I'm the only one working. At least I have vacation and I'm getting paid while we're gone. But we need to keep our spending to a minimum, which wasn't that hard because our friends had kind of set everything up. They had split all the food. They knew we were coming, so we had got chipped in. So somebody was cooking most of the time, things like burgers, hot dogs, things that were easy. It's all campfire type of deal. So we ended up flying into Milwaukee because it was a cheaper flight than flying into Indy on Indy 500 weekend, which makes sense because a friend was living there. So we stayed with him one night and then we drove with him to the Indy 500. We spent the weekend at the Indy 500 and then flew home. Okay. So during this trip, I got to again meet more of his friends and get to know some of the wives of his friends better, which kind of gave me this connection to his friends and the people in Michigan. And they were all just excellent people, really good friends. And all of that too, I believe kind of made me feel, I don't know, like just that's the person I thought Ken was. These are the people that I would associate with in my life. I'm trying to give a little more details on that there were good things that happened in between. Not everything was a red flag. Not everything was a constant fight or a battle. But it did seem that there were constant bumps in the road. In between these bumps, for the most part, we were good. But one of the goals while we were on this trip and while we were in this time period is I'm still trying to find a way to kind of kindle our intimacy. I haven't brought that up for a few episodes, but you know that I went through the HPV. I'm no longer on birth control because the doctors had said that that potentially could. They've seen elevations in the HPV issues when somebody's on birth control. So I was no longer on birth control. And I don't know if that made it better or worse. Ken wanted kids. I wanted kids, but we wanted to do it in the right time. So we weren't actively trying, but I'm going to say it this way. We weren't trying for kids. We weren't preventing kids, but we didn't need to prevent kids because there was no trying going on, if that makes sense. And it seemed like every time he was unemployed, if there was any level of intimacy going on at all, it went like straight down the tubes. And I really feel like he did not point the finger at me every time things kind of fell apart in that area of our relationship. He would own that to himself and he would tell me, maybe I need to go to a doctor. There's maybe, something is wrong with my hormone levels. I have no desire. Sometimes he would say things, especially when he was unemployed, like, I don't feel like I'm a man. I don't feel like I'm pulling my weight. I don't feel like I'm all of this. So as we continue to have intimacy issues in our marriage, that is also something that is putting stress and strain on our relationship. I try to bring it up as much as it is comfortable because obviously talking about it a lot is not comfortable, and it's a really hard place to put somebody in. I didn't want to upset him. I not that I was scared to upset him. I'm trying to say it in a kind way to also explain, but if you guys have ever been in a situation with a significant other where things are just not popping like that, sometimes talking about it puts on more pressure, and then it's really hard to just make things happen if there's expectations. So anyways, I did my best to not put the pressure, to be really light about the subject when it came about. And every time we talked about the subject, it was more of a situation where he was taking ownership for himself. It was not my fault, and I just needed to be patient and wait for him to come around in those areas. So we had gone on this trip to the Indy 500. We had come back, and it seemed like almost nothing had improved in that area. Shortly after we came back, I'm back at work full time. He's looking for a job, but he was very picky about what type of a job he wanted. He couldn't take anything that was, I'm going to call it like beneath him in his mind. I was like, go to Home Depot. Go to Home Depot and get a job. You like working with your hands. Go to an auto parts store. You like working on your car. Like, there's got to be something that you can do in the interim until you find, the true job that you want. And like I said, 6 months of unemployment was really hard on us financially. Now, I told you my parents had helped us out by lowering our rate on the mortgage for the Cottonwood house, which we were doing okay with the renters up there. We actually had a little bit of extra money, which was good. But his parents helped out kind of in a different way. So while he was unemployed, they would go buy us groceries. They would fill our fridge. They would go to Costco and have 2 jars of peanut butter, so send one to our house because there was just the 2 of them. They would get, a 2-pack of bread. A bread would come to our house. They helped in kind of those ways. But his mom kind of always had a heavy hand in our relationship. And I would come home on a random day and all of a sudden his parents were there and his mom had like completely redecorated our bathroom. And I'm like, hi, welcome. This is, yeah, we painted and they put up new decorations and new knickknacks and everything looked great. His mom probably should have been an interior designer. She did so well at that. But 9 times out of 10, when I would randomly come home and my house had been like remodeled in some way, shape, or form, it was not my style. It did not feel like my home. And I felt like there was, I don't know, it just wasn't discussed. And I was starting to feel like a stranger in my own home. And I was the only one working, paying the bills. And that made things uncomfortable. And how do you say that to your in-laws? Like, it's really hard. But we're going to talk about more spending and more debt on the next episode, because as you are unemployed, that starts to happen and then there's more.